The Salem witch trials were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people accused of witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts between February 1692 and May 1693. Belief in the supernatural, and specifically in the devil's practice of giving certain humans or witches the power to harm others in return for their loyalty, had emerged in Europe as early as the 14th century and was widespread in colonial New England. The Salem witch trials would be fueled by resident suspicions of and resentment toward their neighbors, as well as their fear of outsiders.
The infamous Salem witch trials began during the spring of 1692 after a group of young girls in Salem Village, Massachusetts, claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, also known as the devil's magic, and 20 were executed. Eventually, the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Other theories that are said to have led to the Salem witch trials are boredom, and that the two girls who were accusing people simply were bored with the Puritan lifestyle and wanted some entertainment. Another theory is that there were disputes, rivalries, and personal differences, and that many of those who were accused of witchcraft had an unsettled accounts with their accusers or were seen as a threat to the Puritan villages. Theory is the cold weather theory. According to this theory, the Salem tragedy might have been related to the cold weather, or more specifically, a pursuit for something or someone to blame for the related hardships such as crop failure. This theory is supported by historical records which indicate that these years preceding the Salem witch trials were particularly cold. Also, the notorious witch hunt took place within the period of the so-called Great Witch Craze, which turned coincidences what is known in the Little Ice Age, a period of abnormally cold climate between the mid-14th and mid-19th century. And the final theory that is thought to have led to the Salem witch trials is ergot poisoning, which is a consumption of rye grains contaminated with fungus known as ergot, and it could be an explanation for this hysteria in the late 17th century Salem. If eaten, the fungus can cause hallucinations and convulsions similar to those that were reported by the experienced. According to Linda Carparel, professor at Polyethnic Institute, she introduced that ergot poisoning theory and that all conditions were right for the ergot to spread just before the witch trials.
Abigail Williams and Betty Paris were the first girls who showed behaviors that were exhibited through what the doctor said was witchcraft. Abigail was one of the initial accusers in the Salem witch trials. The start of her accusations led to many others, which resulted in more than 150 innocent people being falsely accused of witchcraft. In May 1692, the newly appointed governor of Massachusetts, William Phips, ordered the establishment of the Court of Oyer and Terminer because of the excessive amount of accused witches that needed to be tried in court. The name of the court means to hear and to determine. John Hathorne and Jonathan Cronin were chosen by Governor William Phips to be judges in the Salem witch trials. During the trials, they took on the roles of prosecutors rather than fair judges. During this time, the use of spectral evidence was very common. Witnesses would claim that they saw the actions of their witches' spirits in their dreams or visions, and the victim could be hung with just that evidence alone. The first victim of the Salem witch trials was Bridget Bishop. She was a widow who lived in Salem, who had been detected of witchcraft years before the trials due to her previous run-ins with the law. Bishop was known for her wild manner and interesting clothing choices, which made people suspicious of her. She was brought to court because they thought that she would be easy to prove guilty and wanted to cause fear in society of witchcraft. She was brought to trial on June 2nd, found guilty, and was hung on June 10th, 1692, making her the first person to be executed during the Salem witch trials. Other victims of the Salem witch trials that are mentioned in the Crucible include Tituba, Sarah Good, John Proctor, and Rebecca Nurse. Tituba was the slave of Samuel Paris, the father of Betty Paris. She was accused of witchcraft after his daughter started experiencing weird behaviors. She was one of the first to confess to witchcraft and also claimed that Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne participated in witchcraft as well. One of those girls, Sarah Good, was executed on July 19th, 1692 due to Tituba's confession. Another victim was John Proctor. John Proctor was targeted after his wife, Elizabeth Proctor, was charged with witchcraft. Him and his entire family were then arrested with charges of witchcraft as well. Another accused witch was Rebecca Nurse. Rebecca Nurse was blamed for the deaths of Anne Putnam's 7 infant children. Her jealousy of Rebecca Nurse led to her claim that Rebecca engaged in witchcraft. The Putnams accused many others in town of witchcraft, and it was people like them that caused the Salem witch trials.
On September 22, 1693, 8 people were hanged, and these were the last hangings of the Salem witch trials. The use of spectral evidence, such as dreams and visions, were finally declared as invalid. The last sitting of the court was held in Boston, and by this time Governor Phillips had received a letter from England which convinced him that there were no need to continue with the trials. The governor issued a proclamation that pardoned everyone and guaranteed immensity to those who fled to escape persecution. The outcomes of the Salem witch trials included that a total of 20 accused witches were hanged at Proctor's Ledge into lasting hysteria. According to the Witchcraft of Salem Village, the whole colony, moreover, had suffered. The people had been so determined upon hunting out and destroying witches that they had neglected everything else. Planting, cultivating, the care of houses, barns, roads, fences were all forgotten. As a direct result, food became scarce and taxes higher. Farms were mortgaged or sold, first to pay prison fees and then to pay taxes. Frequently they were abandoned. Salem Village began that slow decay which eventually erased its houses and walls, but never its name and memory. During the chaos of the witch trials, many business matters and regular activities were abandoned. The colony began to suffer due to droughts, crop failure, outbreaks of smallpox, and attacks by the Indians, which led to beliefs that God was punishing them. In 1711, the colony passed a bill restoring some of the names of convicted witches and paid a total of £600 in restitution of their heirs. But not every victim was named because the families of the victims did not want them listed. In 1957, the state of Massachusetts officially apologized for the Salem witch trials. Then, in 1991, Salem town officials announced plans for a Salem witch trial memorial. At the announcement ceremony, Arthur Miller made a speech and read from the last act of The Crucible.
There is not one specific interpretation of these events by historians. Most historians believe that these events occurred because of punishment for religious reasons. It was almost a tactic to frame people who you didn't like or believed did not fit into the community. The witches were frequently accused because someone did not like them or they believed that they had done something wrong that went against societal norms. If enough people testified against the witch, that person would then be accused and sent to die. Historians have viewed images of religious bigotry, unbridled abuse of power, discrimination, and persecution, as well as the perils of society possessed by irrational fears. Feminist historians, therefore, have interpreted all witch trials generally as another social attribute designed to clamp down on women's independence. Many reflect on Cotton Mather's supernatural explanation of his pre-Enlightenment and Puritan mindset that was obsessed with superstitions and witchcraft. The trials were fascinating because no one explanation of the event has ever been universally accepted. Numerous theories have been tried to elucidate the causes of the hysteria, from ergot poisoning to actual witchcraft. No one interpretation has been universally accepted because of questionable motives and use of spectral evidence.